A millionaire's perfect life shatters in one brutal moment. Security cameras capture him pushing his pregnant wife down marble stairs. The baby does not survive, but neither does his web of lies. When the footage goes viral with 50 million views, the entire country demands justice. Led by her father, a powerful federal judge, the truth finally comes to light. This is a story of betrayal, survival, and redemption you will not forget. Stay until the end. Like if this moves you, comment where you are watching from, share to spread awareness, subscribe for more powerful true stories. A quiet night inside a millionaire's mansion turns into something no one could ever imagine. A pregnant woman lies bleeding on cold marble. Her husband stands above her with shaking hands, realizing too late what he has done. But what he does not know is that a small red light in the corner of the ceiling has recorded everything. And when that video leaks, the entire nation will rise against him, led by the one man he never thought would fight back. Her father, a federal judge who will stop at nothing to deliver justice. What unfolds next is a storm of truth, power, and redemption. Stay with me until the end because you will not believe how this story turns out. Tell us what time you are watching and where you are tuning in from. Drop a comment below. We would love to hear from you, but this is not where the story begins. To understand the fall, you must first see the height. 3 months before that terrible night, Victoria Hayes lived what many would call a dream life. At 28 years old, she was married to Dominic Hayes, the tech billionaire whose company had just reached an $80 billion valuation. Their Malibu estate sprawled across 6 acres of oceanfront property, valued at $45 million. The morning sun would flood through floor-to-ceiling windows, turning marble floors into rivers of gold. Victoria moved slowly through the master suite that morning, her hand resting on her round belly. 6 months pregnant. Every movement was careful, protective. She hummed softly to the baby growing inside her, a lullaby her own mother had once sung. Her mother, Rachel, had died of cancer 5 years ago, but Victoria felt her presence strongest in these quiet moments. In the bathroom mirror, she studied her reflection. Her blonde hair fell in soft waves past her shoulders. Her green eyes, once bright with excitement about her life, now carried something else. Uncertainty, maybe even fear, though she would not admit it yet. The bedroom door opened. Dominic walked in, already dressed in a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. His dark hair was perfectly styled. His watch, a Rolex Daytona, caught the light, $40,000 on his wrist, as casual as breathing. "You are still in your robe," he said. Not a question, an observation that felt like criticism. "I had a rough night," Victoria replied softly. "The baby was kicking. I could not sleep." He walked to his closet without responding. She watched him select a tie, blue silk that matched his eyes. Those eyes that had once looked at her with such warmth now seemed distant, calculating. "I have meetings all day," Dominic said, knotting the tie with practiced efficiency. "Do not wait up for me tonight." Again, Victoria tried to keep her voice light. "That is the 4th night this week." He turned to face her, his expression cold. "The company does not run itself, Victoria. Some of us have responsibilities beyond choosing paint colors for a nursery." The words stung, but she forced a smile. "I know you are working hard. I just miss you." "Miss me?" He laughed, short and bitter. "You have everything you could possibly want. This house, the cars, the staff. What more do you need from me?" "Everything," she thought. "I need you to love me the way you used to. I need you to care about our baby. I need to feel safe again." But what she said was, "You are right. I am sorry." He grabbed his briefcase and headed for the door, then paused. "By the way, Scarlett said you should try her trainer. She thinks it might help with the pregnancy weight." Victoria froze. "Who is Scarlett?" "My new marketing consultant," Dominic replied casually. "She has great ideas for the company's image." "I have never heard you mention her before." His jaw tightened. "Are you questioning me now? Is that what this is?" "No, I do not have time for this." He walked out, his footsteps echoing down the hallway. Victoria stood alone in the massive bedroom, her heart pounding. The name hung in the air like poison. Scarlett. Who was she? And why did Dominic talk about her like someone Victoria should already know? She walked to the window overlooking the ocean. The view was breathtaking. Azure water stretched to the horizon. Their private beach below was pristine, untouched. Palm trees swayed in the gentle breeze. Paradise. That is what the magazines called it when they featured this house. But paradise was starting to feel like a prison. Her phone buzzed. A text from Grace Murphy, her best friend since college. Coffee today, but I miss your face. Victoria's fingers hovered over the keyboard. She wanted to say yes. She wanted to sit with Grace and pour out everything she was feeling. The loneliness, the fear that her marriage was crumbling, the way Dominic's words could cut deeper than any knife. But what would she say? My billionaire husband is working too hard. I live in a $45 million house but feel trapped. Who would understand that? She typed back. Rain check. Not feeling well today. It was easier to lie. Victoria made her way downstairs to the kitchen, where Margaret Ellis, their housekeeper, was preparing breakfast. Margaret was 58, with kind eyes and silver hair pulled back in a neat bun. She had worked for the Hayes family for 2 years and had become the closest thing Victoria had to a friend in this house. Good morning, Mrs. Hayes, Margaret said warmly. I made your favorite blueberry pancakes. Thank you, Margaret. Victoria slid onto a bar stool, grateful for the kindness. Margaret placed a plate in front of her, then hesitated. Mrs. Hayes, if you do not mind me saying, you look tired. Are you sleeping all right? Victoria's eyes welled with tears before she could stop them. She blinked them back quickly. I am fine. Just pregnancy hormones. Margaret's expression showed she did not believe that, but she was too polite to push. Well, if you ever need to talk, I am here. After Margaret left the kitchen, Victoria pulled out her phone and opened Instagram. She did not know why, but something drove her to search for that name, Scarlett Montgomery. The profile appeared immediately, 2.3 million followers. The bio read, living my best life, fashion, travel, and everything beautiful. Victoria's stomach dropped as she scrolled through the photos. Scarlett was stunning, 26 years old with long dark hair, perfect skin, and a body that looked sculpted. Every photo screamed wealth and confidence. Designer clothes, exotic locations, private jets. Then Victoria saw it. A photo from 3 days ago. Scarlett at Nobu Malibu, Victoria's favorite restaurant. The caption read, best date night ever with a diamond emoji. But it was not the caption that made Victoria's blood run cold. It was the necklace Scarlett wore in the photo, a custom Cartier piece, sapphires and diamonds. The same necklace Dominic had given Victoria for their second anniversary, the one he said was lost during their trip to Paris last year. Victoria's hands shook as she zoomed in on the photo. There was no mistake. That was her necklace, around another woman's neck. She set the phone down and pressed both hands against her belly, feeling the baby move. What do I do? She whispered to her unborn child. What do I do? The question echoed through the empty kitchen, unanswered. Outside, the sun climbed higher in the perfect California sky. The ocean sparkled. Birds sang in the gardens. And somewhere in the city, her husband was probably with Scarlett right now, living a life that did not include Victoria at all. She had thought she was building a family, a future, a home filled with love. Instead, she was alone in a golden cage, watching her dreams rot from the inside out. And the worst part, she had no idea how much darker it was about to become. Victoria spent the entire day going down a rabbit hole she could not climb out of. Every photo on Scarlett Montgomery's Instagram was a new knife to the heart. A photo of champagne glasses clinking at sunset. The location tagged as Marina del Rey. Dominic had told her he was at a business dinner in downtown Los Angeles that night. A close-up of a man's hand holding Scarlett's. The watch visible in the frame was unmistakable. The same Rolex Daytona that Dominic wore every single day. A selfie taken inside a private jet. The interior looked exactly like the one Dominic's company leased. Scarlett's caption read, flying high with my favorite person. Victoria felt sick. She rushed to the bathroom and barely made it before throwing up. This could not be happening. This could not be real. She called Grace Murphy. This time, she did not care about lying or pretending everything was fine. Grace answered on the second ring. Vic, what is wrong? You sound terrible. I need to see you, Victoria said, her voice cracking. Can you come over, please? I will be there in 30 minutes. Grace arrived exactly on time. Victoria met her at the door and immediately broke down. Grace pulled her into a tight hug, not saying anything, just holding her while Victoria sobbed. They sat on the couch overlooking the ocean. Victoria showed Grace everything: the Instagram photos, the necklace, the private jet, the locations that did not match Dominic's supposed schedule. Grace's face grew darker with each piece of evidence. Victoria, I have to tell you something. 2 weeks ago, I was at Nobu with a client. Dominic was there with her. They were holding hands across the table. He was feeding her dessert. It looked like they were together. Victoria felt like she was drowning. How long has this been going on? I do not know, honey, but it looks like a while. That evening, Victoria made a decision. She needed hard proof, something undeniable. She went to Dominic's home office. His desk was usually locked, but Victoria knew where he kept the key, hidden inside a first edition book he had never actually read. Her hands trembled as she unlocked the desk drawer. Inside were folders organized with military precision. She flipped through them quickly. Then she found it, a folder labeled personal legal. Inside were documents that made her stomach turn. A draft of a prenuptial agreement amendment dated 3 months ago, new clauses that made her blood run cold. In the event of marital dissolution resulting from spouse's documented mental instability, infidelity, or unsubstantiated accusations against primary earner, said spouse forfeits all claims to marital assets, alimony, and custody rights to any children born during the union. Victoria read it 3 times. Dominic was planning to divorce her. Not just divorce her, but destroy her in the process, frame her as crazy, take their baby, leave her with nothing. She kept digging. Receipts for jewelry totaling over $400,000, all sent to an address in Beverly Hills. Scarlett's address, plane tickets, 2 seats to Bora Bora. Departure date was 1 month away, right after their baby's due date. A handwritten note in Dominic's writing. Meet with Preston tomorrow. Finalize the mental health angle. Need documentation by end of month. Preston, Dominic's father, a powerful attorney. They were working together on this. Victoria heard the front door open downstairs. Dominic was home early. Panic flooded through her. She quickly put everything back, locked the drawer, returned the key. But as she turned to leave, Dominic appeared in the doorway. He looked at her for a long moment. His eyes moved from her face to the desk behind her, back to her face. "What are you doing in here?" he asked quietly. "I was looking for paper," Victoria said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I wanted to write a letter to the baby." "Paper." He stepped into the room. "You needed to come into my private office for paper." "Dominic, do not lie to me." His voice was cold now, sharp. "What did you find?" "Nothing. I did not find anything." He moved closer. "You were snooping. You went through my desk." "Please, just calm down. Let me explain." "Yes, you did." His voice rose suddenly, making her flinch. "You think I am stupid? You think I do not know what you are doing?" "I saw the photos," she blurted out. "You and Scarlett. I know about the affair." For a second, something flickered across his face, and then it was gone, replaced by something harder. "Affair." He shook his head. "Is that what this is about? You think I am having an affair because I work with an attractive woman. She was wearing my necklace. The one you said was lost. I bought her a similar necklace. So what?" "My God." "Victoria, listen to yourself. The pregnancy hormones are making you paranoid. You are losing your grip on reality." "I am not paranoid. I saw the receipts. I saw the amendment to the prenup." His expression changed then. The mask slipped. She saw the truth in his eyes. "You went through my private documents," he said slowly. "That is a violation of my privacy. My attorney father will have a field day with this." "Dominic, what are you planning?" He smiled, cruel and cold. "You want to know the truth, fine. Yes, Scarlett and I are together. Yes, we have been planning this. And yes, when this baby is born, I am filing for divorce." Victoria felt like the floor had dropped out. Why would you do this?" "Because you are not what I need anymore. Scarlett understands the world I live in. You are just a judge's daughter playing dress up in my world. I am carrying your child, and I will have full custody. My lawyers have been documenting everything. Your erratic behavior, your accusations, your jealousy. The security cameras in this house have recorded you following me, checking my phone, going through my things. We have months of evidence showing you are mentally unstable. I will fight you, Victoria whispered. My father, your father, Dominic cut her off. Judge Harold Brennan Preston has already reached out to several of your father's colleagues. They will testify that you have always been unstable, that your mother's mental health issues run in the family. You cannot take my baby. Watch me. Dominic straightened his tie. Here is how this is going to work. You are going to stay quiet. You are going to play the perfect wife for the next 3 months. And when the baby is born, you are going to sign whatever papers I put in front of you. If you do that, I will give you $1,000,000. If you fight me, I will destroy you. I will make sure you never see that child again. I will make sure your father's reputation is ruined. Do you understand? Victoria could not speak. This man, the one she had married, was a stranger, a monster. Do you understand? He repeated. I understand, she whispered. Good. He walked past her. I am staying at the office tonight. Do not call me. Victoria stood in the empty office long after he was gone. Through the windows, the sun was setting over the ocean. Beautiful, peaceful, a cruel contrast to the nightmare unfolding. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands and called the one person who could help her. Dad, she said when he answered, I need you. Judge Harold Brennan arrived at the Malibu estate within 2 hours. He was a tall man of 62 with silver hair and the kind of presence that commanded respect. He had served in the military before becoming an attorney, then a federal judge. He was known for his integrity and his unwavering belief in justice. But when he saw his daughter's face, all of that fell away. He was just a father looking at his child in pain. Victoria fell into his arms, and for the first time in months, she felt safe. They sat in the living room, overlooking the dark ocean. Margaret Ellis had brought them tea before quietly disappearing. Victoria told her father everything. The affair, the prenup amendment, the custody plan, the way Dominic had looked at her with such cold calculation. Harold listened without interrupting, his jaw tightening with each revelation. When Victoria finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Victoria, he finally said, I need you to listen to me very carefully. We are going to get you out of here tonight. You are going to pack a bag, and you are coming home with me. He said he will destroy us both if I fight him. Let him try. Harold's voice was steel. I have spent 30 years in the legal system. I know men like Dominic Hayes. They think money and power make them untouchable. They are wrong. But the cameras, the evidence he has been collecting, can be countered with the truth. Harold took her hands. Your mother, God rest her soul, would never forgive me if I let this man hurt you and my grandchild. We are going to fight this, and we are going to win. Victoria felt a spark of hope for the first time in weeks. How demon. First, we document everything, every threat he made, every piece of evidence you found. Second, we get you somewhere safe where he cannot manipulate or intimidate you. Third, we find our own evidence. If he has been planning this for months, there will be a trail, phone records, financial transactions, witnesses. Margaret saw things, Victoria said suddenly. She has made comments about Dominic's behavior. She might help us. Then we talk to Margaret. We build a case. And when the time is right, we strike first. They spent the next hour making plans. Harold would have Victoria move into his house in Pacific Palisades temporarily. They would consult with a family law attorney, someone Harold trusted completely. They would hire a private investigator to follow Dominic and document his affair with Scarlett. Victoria went upstairs to pack a bag. As she folded clothes and gathered essentials, she felt lighter. Her father was right. She did not have to be a victim in this. She could fight back. She was reaching for her laptop when she heard voices downstairs. Male voices, angry voices. Victoria rushed to the top of the stairs. In the foyer below, she saw Dominic, and he had brought someone with him. Police officers. Dad, Victoria called out, her voice shaking. Harold stepped forward, placing himself between the officers and the staircase. What is the meaning of this? Officer Davis, a young man who looked uncomfortable, spoke first. Sir, we received a domestic disturbance call from this address. We need to speak with Mrs. Hayes, from whom Harold demanded. Who called you? Dominic stepped forward, his face a mask of concern. I did. I came home to find my pregnant wife in a state of extreme agitation. She attacked me. Look. He turned, showing his face. There were red scratches down his cheek. His shirt was torn at the collar. Victoria's blood turned to ice. That is a lie. I never touched him. She is having a breakdown, Dominic said, his voice trembling as if with emotion. I am worried about her mental state, about the safety of our unborn child. This is insane, Harold said. My daughter has done nothing wrong. This man is manipulating you. Detective Morrison stepped forward. He was older, more seasoned. Judge Brennan, with all due respect, we have a citizen reporting assault. We need to speak with your daughter. Victoria descended the stairs slowly, her father staying close beside her. I did not touch my husband. He is lying. Then how do you explain these injuries? Detective Morrison asked, gesturing to Dominic's face. He did them to himself, or had someone else do them. He has been planning this. He told me tonight he is setting me up to look unstable so he can take our baby. The officers exchanged glances. Victoria could see they did not believe her. She was the hysterical pregnant woman. Dominic was the concerned husband. We have security footage, Dominic said quietly. From earlier this evening. It shows Victoria going through my private office without permission, breaking into my locked desk. She has been acting erratically for weeks. I have been documenting it on the advice of my therapist. That is not what happened, Victoria said desperately. He is twisting everything. Dad, tell them. But Harold's face had gone pale. He knew what was happening. Dominic had planned this perfectly. The timing, the evidence, the scratches. It was a setup designed to make Victoria look guilty. Officers, Harold said carefully, my daughter is 6 months pregnant. She is not a threat to anyone. Whatever my son-in-law is claiming, I assure you there is more to this story. We understand, Judge, Detective Morrison said, but we still need Mrs. Hayes to come to the station for questioning. I can bring her myself, Harold offered. Sir, that would not be proper procedure. Victoria felt the walls closing in. I did not do anything wrong, she repeated, but her voice sounded weak even to her own ears. The next 3 hours were a nightmare. At the police station, Victoria was questioned repeatedly. Detective Morrison was professional but skeptical. They showed her photos of Dominic's injuries. They asked about her mental health history. They inquired about medication she might be taking. Harold sat beside her the entire time, his presence the only thing keeping her from falling apart completely. Then Trevor Walsh arrived, Dominic's business partner, a man Victoria had met exactly twice at company events. He gave a statement to police claiming he had witnessed Victoria threatening Dominic at a charity gala 2 weeks prior. She said something about destroying him if he ever left her. Trevor told Detective Morrison, I thought she was joking at the time, but now I am not so sure. It was another lie. Victoria had never said anything of the sort, but Trevor was backing up Dominic's narrative. By midnight, Victoria was released, but with conditions. A temporary restraining order had been filed. She could not return to the Malibu estate. She could not contact Dominic directly. Any violations would result in immediate arrest. Harold drove her to his house in silence. Victoria stared out the window, her mind reeling. In the span of one evening, she had gone from planning her escape to being painted as an abuser. He won, she whispered. Dominic won. No, Harold said firmly. He played his hand. That means we know his strategy now. We adjust ours accordingly. But as they pulled into Harold's driveway, Victoria felt only despair. She was trapped. Her bank accounts, all joint with Dominic, were likely frozen by now. She had no access to money, no access to her home, no way to fight back. And Dominic. He was probably with Scarlett right now, celebrating how perfectly his plan had worked. Victoria touched her belly, feeling the baby move. I am so sorry, she whispered to her unborn child. I am so sorry I could not protect you. Inside the house, Harold made up the guest room. As Victoria lay in the unfamiliar bed, she heard her phone buzz, a text from an unknown number. Enjoying your new accommodations, get comfortable. You will never see the inside of that mansion again. Or your baby. Sweet dreams. Victoria. Below the message was a photo. Dominic and Scarlett, wrapped in each other's arms, lying in what used to be Victoria's bed. Victoria turned off her phone and pulled the covers over her head, letting the tears come. She cried for the marriage she thought she had, for the future that was slipping away, for the baby who would be born into this nightmare. She cried until there were no tears left. And in the darkness, a small voice whispered in her mind, a voice that sounded like her mother. Get up. You are stronger than this. Get up and fight. But Victoria did not know if she had any fight left in her. The next morning, Victoria woke to her phone ringing. The caller ID showed her home number, the Malibu estate. Her heart jumped. Maybe Dominic had come to his senses. Maybe he wanted to talk. She answered without thinking. Hello. Hi, Victoria. The voice was bright, cheerful, and unfamiliar. This is Scarlett Montgomery. I just wanted to reach out woman to woman and let you know that everything is going to be okay. Victoria's stomach turned. She could not speak. I know this must be so hard for you, Scarlett continued, her voice dripping with false sympathy. Being pregnant and going through a separation. But I promise I will take such good care of the baby when he or she arrives. I have already started redecorating the nursery. You chose pink, which is so sweet, but a little basic. Don't you think I am going with a sage green? Much more sophisticated? Why are you calling me? Victoria managed to say. Because I wanted to reassure you. I know Dominic was worried you might do something desperate. Try to hurt yourself or the baby. I told him you seem stronger than that. You are a survivor. Victoria, I can tell. You do not know anything about me. I know you are Judge Brennan's daughter. I know you married Dominic when he was still building his company. Some people might say you were a gold digger, but I do not judge. We all do what we have to do, right? Victoria's hand tightened on the phone. I loved him. I did not marry him for money. Scarlett laughed, a tinkling sound that made Victoria want to scream. Sure, acho. Anyway, I should go. Dominic and I are flying to Napa today. He needs to decompress after all this drama. But do not worry, I will take good care of him. In every way. The line went dead. Victoria sat frozen on the edge of the bed, her mind spinning. This woman, this stranger, was living her life, sleeping in her bed, making plans for her baby. It was surreal, horrifying. She went downstairs to find her father in the kitchen, on the phone with someone. He gestured for her to wait. Yes, Margaret, I understand. No, she is safe with me. If you could do that, it would help tremendously. Thank you. He hung up and turned to Victoria. That was Margaret Ellis. She wants to help. She said she has been keeping notes about Dominic's behavior for the past 2 months. Dates and times when he came home late, smelling of perfume. Arguments she overheard. She even took photos of receipts she found in his jacket pockets. Why would she do that? Victoria asked. She said she has seen this before. With her own sister. A husband who isolated and controlled until there was nothing left. She was worried about you but did not want to overstep. Now she knows she should have spoken up sooner. It was the first piece of good news Victoria had heard in days. Can we use her testimony? Absolutely. And there is more. I spoke with a private investigator this morning. He is going to start following Dominic and Scarlett. Document their relationship. Get photos, timestamps, everything we need to prove the affair. Victoria nodded, feeling a tiny spark of hope. Scarlett called me this morning. From the house. Harold's expression darkened. What did she say? Victoria recounted the conversation. Harold listened, his jaw tight. That was a mistake on her part. We can use that call to show harassment. Did you record it? No, I did not think. From now on, every call, every text, every interaction gets documented. Do you understand we are building a case? Over the next 2 weeks, Victoria stayed with her father. She avoided social media. She did not answer calls from numbers she did not recognize. She focused on her health and the baby growing inside her. But the isolation was suffocating. She was cut off from her life, from her home, from everything familiar. Grace Murphy visited twice, bringing clothes and toiletries. Each visit ended with both women crying. The private investigator sent regular updates, photos of Dominic and Scarlett at restaurants, entering hotels together, shopping for furniture. They were not hiding their relationship anymore. They were flaunting it. He thinks he has already won, Harold said one evening as they reviewed the latest evidence. That is his weakness. He has gotten arrogant. When do we fight back? Victoria asked. Soon. We are almost ready. But before they could make their move, Dominic made his. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon. Victoria was in the guest room when she heard shouting downstairs. She rushed to the landing and saw her father at the front door, blocking two police officers from entering. You do not have the right to enter this house without a warrant, Harold was saying. Officer Brennan held up papers. We have a court order, Judge. We need to speak with Mrs. Hayes. Victoria's heart sank. What is this about? Detective Reynolds stepped forward. Mrs. Hayes, we have received new information regarding the incident at your home 2 weeks ago. We need you to come with us. What new information? Harold demanded. Security footage from inside the Malibu estate. It shows Mrs. Hayes assaulting her husband on the night in question. That is impossible, Victoria said. I never touched him. The footage is very clear, ma'am. We need you to come to the station for further questioning. Harold's face went white. You are arresting my daughter. Not at this time, but she is a person of interest in an ongoing investigation. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. Victoria looked at her father, fear coursing through her. Dad, let me come with you, Harold said, as her attorney. That would not be proper. Judge, you are too close to the case. She needs independent representation. The next hours blurred together. Victoria was taken to the police station again. This time, the questions were harsher, more accusatory. They showed her video footage that made her sick. It was from the Malibu estate. Yes, from the security cameras Dominic had installed, but it had been edited, spliced together to make it look like Victoria was the aggressor. A shot of her standing in the doorway to Dominic's office. Cut to a shot of Dominic stumbling backward. Cut to a close-up of the scratches on his face. I did not do that, Victoria kept saying. The video is edited. It is not real. We have had our tech team analyze the footage, Detective Reynolds said. They confirm it is authentic. No signs of tampering. Then they are lying or incompetent. Please, you have to believe me. My husband is setting me up. He has been planning this for months. But she could see in their eyes that they did not believe her. They saw what Dominic wanted them to see. A pregnant woman losing control. A concerned husband trying to protect himself. By evening, Victoria was released again, but this time with an ankle monitor. She was under house arrest at her father's home pending further investigation. If she violated the terms, she would be taken into custody immediately. When they finally returned home, Victoria broke down completely. He has won, Dad. He has actually won. Harold held her while she sobbed. No, he has shown his hand. Now we know exactly what he is capable of, and that means we can plan accordingly. How can we fight video evidence? By finding the truth, technology can be manipulated, but facts cannot. We will get our own tech expert to analyze that footage. We will find the gaps, the edits, the proof that it was manufactured. And if we cannot, Harold took her face in his hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. Then we find another way. Victoria, I promise you, on your mother's grave, I will not let this man destroy you. Do you understand me? I will not let him win. That night, Victoria lay awake in the guest room, the ankle monitor heavy around her leg. She stared at the ceiling, feeling the baby kick inside her. Strong kicks now, insistent. I am trying, she whispered to her unborn child. I am trying so hard to protect you. Her phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number. More photos. Dominic and Scarlett at a furniture store, picking out a crib. The caption read, "Getting ready for our baby. Thanks for the contribution, Victoria." She turned off her phone and closed her eyes. In the darkness, she made a decision. If they wanted to destroy her, fine, but she would not go down quietly. She would fight with everything she had, for herself, for her father, for her baby. She just needed one chance, one opening, one moment when Dominic's perfect plan showed a crack. And when that moment came, she would strike. 2 weeks passed in a haze of anxiety and preparation. Victoria's world had shrunk to her father's house, her lawyer's office, and mandatory check-ins with the court. The ankle monitor was a constant reminder of how completely Dominic had trapped her. But Harold was building their counter case methodically. The tech expert he hired confirmed the security footage had been edited. Margaret Ellis provided detailed testimony about Dominic's behavior. The private investigator delivered photos showing Dominic and Scarlett's relationship. "We are ready," Harold told Victoria one morning. "We file everything next week." Then the court order arrived. Victoria was granted a supervised visit to the Malibu estate to collect her personal belongings. 2 hours with a court-appointed officer present. "This is good," Harold said. "You can get your things, your laptop, your journals, any other evidence?" But Victoria felt uneasy. Why would Dominic agree to this? He probably thinks he has already won. Officer Davis met Victoria at the estate gates. "Mrs. Hayes, you have the 2 hours to gather your belongings. I will be present the entire time. Mr. Hayes has agreed to stay out of your way, but he is on the property." Victoria's hands shook as they walked up the driveway. The mansion looked different now. Colder, like a beautiful shell with nothing living inside. Dominic stood at the door, impeccably dressed. His face showed concern, sadness, the perfect mask of a worried husband. "Victoria, he said softly, "I'm glad you are here. We need to talk." "Mr. Hayes?" Officer Davis intervened. "You agreed to give Mrs. Hayes space." "Of course. I will be in my office if needed." He looked at Victoria. "But please, before you go, just 5 minutes. Just us." Officer Davis looked uncomfortable. "Sir, that is not—" "It is fine," Victoria said. Something in Dominic's tone made her curious. They walked to the living room, Officer Davis staying in the hallway. The space where Victoria had once felt at home now felt like enemy territory. Dominic poured himself a drink. Whiskey, not even noon. "You look tired," he said. "What do you want, Dominic?" He set down his glass. "I want this to be over. I have a proposal. You sign the divorce papers. You agree to shared custody, 60-40 in my favor. You get $2 million and the Santa Barbara house. We both move on. No more legal battles. Shared custody." Victoria almost laughed. 2 weeks ago, you wanted full custody." I said things in anger. "I have been thinking about what is best for the baby. You are the mother. You should have time with your child." It was too easy, too convenient. "What is the catch?" "No catch. I just want to end this cleanly." Victoria stared at him. "You are scared. My father found something. What did he find?" Dominic's expression flickered. "I have no idea what you mean." "The SEC investigation?" Victoria guessed. "That is what this is about. You need this divorce to happen quickly before they freeze all the assets." His jaw tightened. "You do not know what you are talking about." "Then why the sudden generosity?" "Because I am trying to be reasonable." His voice rose. "But if you are going to throw my offers back in my face—" "Mr. Hayes," Officer Davis called from the hallway. "Is everything all right?" "Everything is fine." Dominic called back. He turned to Victoria, voice lower. "You have 48 hours to think about my offer. After that, we go back to war. Think carefully. Victoria, think about what is best for your baby. My baby deserves better than you." Something dark crossed Dominic's face. "You stupid woman. You have no idea what you have just turned down." "I am going upstairs to pack my things now." Victoria gathered her belongings quickly. Officer Davis followed her upstairs. In the master bedroom, everything looked different. Scarlett had already moved in. New bedding, new photos of Scarlett and Dominic on the nightstand. In the nursery, Victoria paused. The room was half finished. The crib she had chosen stood in the corner, but Scarlett's sage green paint covered one wall. Victoria touched her belly. "Not here," she whispered. "You will not grow up here. I promise." She was packing the last box when she heard it. Raised voices from downstairs. Dominic, shouting. Then Scarlett. "I do not care what you promised her." Scarlett was screaming. "I am not waiting another 3 months. Either she signs the papers this week or I am done." "Keep your voice down," Dominic hissed. She is upstairs. I do not care if she hears you said it would be easy. You said she would fall apart, but she is still fighting, and I am sick of waiting. Scarlett, please. No, you promised me that house. You promised me the life. If you cannot deliver, then maybe I should tell everyone the truth about all of it. Victoria moved closer to the stairs. Officer Davis beside her looked alarmed. What truth? Dominic's voice was dangerous now. You know exactly what I am talking about. The money you have been moving out of the company, the offshore accounts, the fake contract. Maybe I should make a call to the ECC myself. You would not dare. Try me. There was a sound like glass shattering. Then silence. Officer Davis immediately called for backup. We have a domestic disturbance. Send units now. Victoria stood frozen on the staircase. In 30 seconds, Dominic's perfect facade had cracked, and Scarlett had threatened to destroy him. Down in the living room, she heard Scarlett scream, then the sound of a hand striking flesh. A slap. Officer Davis ran down the stairs. Victoria followed. In the living room, Scarlett held her face, eyes wide with shock. Dominic stood over her, his hand still raised. You do not threaten me, he said coldly. Ever. Dominic turned and saw Victoria on the stairs, saw Officer Davis reaching for his radio. His expression changed. Calculation replaced anger. Victoria attacked Scarlett, Dominic said suddenly, loudly. Officer, you saw it. That is not what happened, Officer Davis said. But Dominic was already moving toward Victoria. Stay back, she is dangerous. His foot caught on the edge of the coffee table, or maybe he meant to do it. Dominic fell forward. His body slammed into Victoria on the stairs. She tried to catch herself, but she was off balance. Her foot slipped. She felt herself falling backward. Everything slowed down. She saw Officer Davis reaching for her, saw Scarlett's shocked face, saw Dominic's eyes, and in them, satisfaction. He had planned this moment, this fall. Victoria's back hit the stairs. Pain exploded through her body. She tumbled down 3 steps before Officer Davis caught her. Call an ambulance, he shouted. Pregnant woman down. I need paramedics now. Victoria pressed her hands to her belly, felt wetness, looked down and saw blood. No, she whispered. No, oh, no, not my baby. Please, not my baby. Through the pain, she heard Scarlett screaming, heard more sirens approaching, felt Officer Davis trying to stop the bleeding. The last thing she saw before everything went dark was the security camera in the corner of the living room. Its red light blinked steadily, recording everything. Finally, after months of lies, the truth would come out. But the price was more than Victoria had ever imagined she would have to pay. Victoria woke to fluorescent lights and the steady beep of machines. Her body felt heavy, disconnected. For a moment, she did not remember where she was or why everything hurt. Then it all came rushing back. The fall, the blood, the baby. No, she tried to say, but her throat was too dry. The word came out as barely a whisper. A nurse appeared beside her bed immediately. Mrs. Hayes, try not to move. You are in the hospital. You had emergency surgery. Surgery? The word echoed in Victoria's mind. My baby, she managed to say. Is my baby? The nurse's expression answered the question before her words did. I am so sorry. The doctors did everything they could, but the trauma was too severe. Your baby did not survive. The world stopped. Everything stopped. The machines kept beeping. The nurse kept talking, but Victoria heard none of it. There was only a vast, endless silence where her future used to be. Her baby, Grace Rachel Hayes, the little girl she would never hold, never sing to, never watch grow up, gone. How long, Victoria heard herself ask. How long have I been here? 3 days. You have been unconscious. Your father has been here the entire time. As if summoned by his name, Harold Brennan appeared in the doorway. His face was haggard, aged 10 years and 3 days. When he saw Victoria awake, his eyes filled with tears. He crossed to her bed and took her hand. Victoria, my God, I thought I had lost you too. The baby, Victoria whispered. Dad, they said. I know, sweetheart. I know. He pressed her hand to his face. and she felt his tears on her skin. I am so sorry. I am so sorry. They cried together, father and daughter, mourning the grandchild he would never meet. The loss was a physical thing, crushing and complete. Finally, Marie, Victoria asked the question she was not sure she wanted answered. What happened after I fell? Harold's expression hardened. Officer Davis filed a report stating that Dominic deliberately pushed you, and this time there were witnesses. Even Scarlett Montgomery gave a statement. Scarlett, she saw what happened. When police questioned her separately, she started talking about everything, the affair, the plan to drive you crazy, the financial crimes, all of it. Victoria tried to process this information through the fog of grief and medication. Why would she tell them? Self-preservation. She realized that Dominic was willing to let you die to protect himself. She saw what kind of man he really was, and she wanted out. Harold squeezed her hand. Victoria, there is something else. The security footage captured everything. Dominic pushing you, the fall, all of it. And somehow it leaked online. Victoria's heart skipped. Leaked. Margaret Ellis sent it to a journalist. The video went viral. 5 million views in the first 12 hours. Now it is over 50 million. The entire country has seen what Dominic did to you. 50 million people. 50 million witnesses to the moment her life shattered. People are protesting outside Hayes Tech headquarters. Harold continued. The board removed him as CEO. His investors are pulling out. Everything he built is collapsing. Good, Victoria said, her voice hard. I want him to lose everything. He will. The district attorney is filing charges. Aggravated assault, manslaughter in the death of the baby, fraud, conspiracy. He is looking at decades in prison. Victoria closed her eyes. It should have felt like victory, but all she felt was empty. Her baby was still gone. Justice would not bring her back. There is something else, Harold said gently. The hospital needed to issue a death certificate for the baby. They asked if you wanted to name her. Victoria's eyes opened. I already did. Grace Rachel Hayes. After Mom and after Grace Murphy. Harold smiled through his tears. Your mother would have been honored, and so will your friend. Over the next few days, Victoria's hospital room filled with flowers from strangers. Cards and letters arrived by the hundreds. Women sharing their own stories of abuse and survival. Men apologizing for not doing more to protect the women in their lives. The hashtag Justice for Victoria trended globally. Celebrities posted statements condemning domestic violence. Politicians called for stronger laws protecting abuse victims. Victoria's private nightmare had become a public reckoning. Detective Reynolds came to take her formal statement. He was apologetic, almost deferential. Mrs. Hayes, I owe you an apology. We should have seen through Dominic's lies sooner. We failed you. You believed what he wanted you to believe, Victoria said. He was very good at lying. That is no excuse. But I promise you, we will make sure he faces every consequence for what he did. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. Victoria would have to testify, would have to face Dominic in court and recount the worst moments of her life. Can you do this? Harold asked her. The evidence is strong enough without your testimony. No, Victoria said firmly. I need to face him. I need to look him in the eye and tell the truth. Not for me, for every woman who could not. When the day came, Victoria was weak but determined. She held her head high as she entered the courthouse. The scene outside was chaos. Hundreds of protesters lined the steps, holding signs that read, Justice for Victoria and no more silence. News crews from every major network were there. Inside, the courtroom was packed. Victoria took the witness stand with her father sitting in the front row. Dominic sat at the defense table, his expensive suit unable to hide how much he had diminished. For the first time since she met him, he looked powerless. The prosecutor, Elizabeth Warren, approached the stand. Mrs. Hayes, can you tell the court what happened on the day of April 15th? Victoria took a breath and began. She recounted the supervised visit, the argument between Dominic and Scarlett, Officer Davis calling for backup. And then what happened? Elizabeth asked. Dominic saw me on the stairs. He looked at Officer Davis, and I saw him make a decision. He came toward me, and he pushed me. You are certain he pushed you. It was not an accident. I am certain. I saw his hands come up, felt them hit my shoulders. There was force behind it, intent. What happened next? Victoria's voice shook. I fell. I could not stop myself. I remember thinking about the baby, trying to protect my stomach. Then I hit the stairs, and I felt something break inside me. I knew, even before the blood, I knew I was losing her. The courtroom was silent except for the sound of several people crying. Elizabeth showed the security footage on a large screen. The entire courtroom watched Dominic push Victoria, watched her fall, watched the blood pool on the marble stairs. When it finished, Elizabeth turned to the jury. That is not an accident. That is assault. That is a murder. Scarlett Montgomery, granted immunity in exchange for her testimony, confirmed the entire conspiracy. He told me the plan from the beginning, Scarlett said on the stand. Drive Victoria crazy, document everything, take the baby after it was born. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they returned, the forewoman stood. On the charge of aggravated assault, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of manslaughter in the death of Grace Rachel Hayes, we find the defendant guilty. On all charges of fraud and conspiracy, we find the defendant guilty. The courtroom erupted in applause. Dominic sat motionless as the verdict was read. His father, Preston Hayes, walked out without looking back. Victoria stepped outside the courthouse into bright sunlight. The crowd cheered. Reporters shouted questions, but Victoria heard only white noise. Harold put his arm around her. You did it, sweetheart. You won. Victoria looked up at her father. Then why does it feel like I lost in everything? He had no answer for that. The California sun was gentle on Victoria's face as she stood outside the new building in downtown Los Angeles. The glass and steel structure rose 8 stories, modern and welcoming. Above the entrance, brass letters spelled out the Grace Rachel Hayes Foundation for Domestic Violence Survivors. It had been 6 months since the trial, 6 months since Dominic was sentenced to 25 years in prison without parole, 6 months since Victoria's life had been destroyed and she had begun the slow process of rebuilding. She looked different now. Her hair was shorter, cut to her shoulders in a style that felt less like the woman she had been and more like the woman she was becoming. She had gained back the weight she lost in the hospital. The physical scars had healed. The emotional ones were still healing. Grace Murphy stood beside her, now the executive director of the foundation. Are you ready? Grace asked. Victoria took a breath. I am ready. They walked inside together. The lobby was filled with people waiting for the ribbon-cutting ceremony. Reporters, donors, survivors of domestic violence who had found help through the foundation's early programs. In just 6 months, the foundation had helped over 500 women. They provided free legal aid, temporary housing, therapy, job training, and financial assistance. Everything Victoria wished she had known was available when she was trapped. The foundation was funded by $100 million from Victoria's civil settlement against Dominic. Every penny of his fortune was going toward helping the women he and men like him had hurt. Harold stood near the front of the crowd, beaming with pride. Beside him was Margaret Ellis, now the foundation's honorary board member and a frequent speaker about the importance of speaking up when you see abuse. Victoria took the podium. Cameras flashed. Microphones were thrust forward. She waited for the crowd to settle before speaking. Thank you all for being here today, she began. 6 months ago, I was a different person. I was a victim. I was powerless. I was silent. Today, I stand before you as a survivor, and I want every woman watching this to know that you can survive too. She paused, gathering her thoughts. My daughter Grace Rachel Hayes lived for only 6 months. She never took her first breath outside my body. She never opened her eyes or felt sunlight on her face. But her legacy will save thousands of lives. In her name, we are creating a place where women can find safety, find justice, and find themselves again. The crowd applauded. Victoria felt tears on her cheeks but did not wipe them away. Domestic violence does not discriminate, she continued. It happens in mansions and in mobile homes. It happens to educated women and uneducated women. It happens to the strong and the vulnerable. What matters is not how it all started, but how we end it. She looked directly into the camera, knowing millions might watch this later. If you are in an abusive relationship, please know this. It is not your fault. You did not cause this, and you do not have to stay. There is help, there is hope, and there is a future waiting for you on the other side. After the ceremony, Victoria met with several survivors privately. Each woman shared her story. Some had escaped, some were still trapped but looking for a way out. All of them thanked Victoria for giving them courage. One woman, Anna Campbell, grabbed Victoria's hands with tears streaming down her face. "I saw your video, the one of you falling, and I realized that was going to be me if I did not leave. You saved my life by sharing your story." Victoria hugged her tightly. "You saved your own life by being brave enough to walk away." That evening, Victoria returned to her new home in Santa Monica. It was modest compared to the Malibu estate, a 3-bedroom beach house with weathered wood siding and a small garden. But it was hers, truly hers. No one could take it from her. She poured a glass of wine and walked out to the back deck. The ocean stretched before her, endless and beautiful. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Her phone buzzed, a text from Grace Murphy. "You were amazing today. Grace would be so proud." Victoria smiled and typed back, "I hope so." Another text came through, this one from a number she did not recognize. Her heart skipped, old trauma making her afraid it was Dominic somehow. But when she opened it, she saw it was from one of the foundation's counselors. "Mrs. Hayes, I wanted you to know that your story inspired me to leave my own abusive marriage last month. I am safe now. Thank you for showing me it was possible." Victoria set down her phone and looked out at the ocean. These messages came almost daily now. Women telling her that her pain had given them permission to acknowledge their own, that her strength had helped them find theirs. It did not erase what she had lost. Nothing could do that, but it gave the loss meaning. She thought about Dominic in his prison cell, about Scarlett Montgomery, whose influencer career had crumbled, who now worked a regular job and lived in obscurity, about Preston Hayes, who had disowned his son and disappeared from public life. Victoria felt no satisfaction in their downfalls, only a quiet sense that justice, imperfect as it was, had been served. Her father called just as the sun dipped below the horizon. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Good," Victoria said, surprised to realize it was true. "I am actually feeling good. I am proud of you. Your mother would be, too." "I know, Dad. Thank you for everything, for fighting for me when I could not fight for myself. That is what family does." After they hung up, Victoria stayed on the deck as darkness fell. Stars appeared one by one in the clear sky. She found herself talking to the daughter she never got to hold. "I wish you were here, Grace. I wish I could tell you bedtime stories and teach you to swim and watch you grow up. But since I cannot do that, I will do the next best thing. I will make sure your name means something, that your short life saves long ones." The ocean whispered against the shore. The night air was cool and clean. For the first time since everything fell apart, Victoria felt something close to peace. The foundation would open its doors to clients tomorrow. The work of rebuilding, both for herself and for others, would continue. There would be hard days ahead, moments when the grief felt overwhelming, times when she questioned if any of it mattered. But tonight, standing on her deck under the stars, Victoria knew the truth. She had survived, and in surviving, she had found purpose. That was enough. That was everything. That was everything. 9 months after the trial, Victoria sat across from a famous television journalist in a studio in Los Angeles. The interview would air nationally and had been promoted for weeks. America wanted to hear from the woman whose video had sparked a movement. The journalist, Catherine Pierce, was known for her tough but fair questions. She smiled warmly as the camera started rolling. "Victoria Hayes, thank you for joining us today. This is your first major interview since the trial. Why now?" Victoria had prepared for this question. "Because I am ready. For months, I was focused on survival, on healing, on building the foundation. But recently, I realized that there are still women out there who think they are alone, who think what is happening to them is somehow their fault. I want them to hear my story, all of it. Let us go back to the beginning. When did you first realize your marriage was in trouble?" Victoria thought carefully. "I think I knew something was wrong for months before I admitted it to myself. Dominic was different after his company went public. more distant, more controlling. But I convinced myself it was just stress, that it would pass. Walk us through the moment you confronted him. What happened? Victoria recounted the scene in Dominic's office, the prenup amendment, the custody plan, the cold calculation in his eyes when he told her he was taking their baby. He looked at me like I was an obstacle, Victoria said. Not a person, not his wife, just something in his way that needed to be removed. And the night of the fall, can you tell us what you remember? Victoria had told this story many times now, but each time it was still hard. I remember seeing him make a decision. I saw it in his eyes. He was going to hurt me, and he did not care about the consequences. When his hands hit my shoulders, when I felt myself falling, I tried to protect my baby. That was my only thought. Protect the baby. Her voice broke. Catherine waited patiently. I felt her die. Victoria continued. On those stairs, I felt the moment Grace left me, and I have to live with that for the rest of my life. Victoria, there has been some criticism. People saying you should have left sooner. What do you say to that? I say those people have never been in an abusive relationship. They do not understand how it works. The way it starts small. The way the abuser makes you doubt yourself. Makes you think you are the problem. By the time you realize what is happening, you are already trapped. Do you blame yourself? Every day I blame myself for not seeing it sooner, for not fighting harder, for not protecting my daughter. But my therapist has helped me understand that the only person responsible for what happened is Dominic. He made the choice to abuse me, to manipulate me, to push me down those stairs, not me. What do you want people to take away from your story? Victoria looked directly into the camera. I want women in abusive relationships to know that it is not too late. You can leave, you can survive, and there are people who will help you. I also want people who see abuse happening to speak up. Margaret Ellis, my housekeeper, documented what she saw and testified against Dominic. She was braver than I was. You have donated over $100 million to your foundation. Why give it all away? Because that money was built on lies and manipulation. I do not want it. What I want is for that money to do good in the world, to help women who are where I was, to create the resources that might have saved my daughter's life. Tell us about the foundation. What services does it provide? Victoria's face brightened slightly. We offer comprehensive support, legal aid for women seeking restraining orders or divorces, temporary housing that is safe and secret, therapy, both individual and group, job training and financial planning so women can become independent. We have helped over 800 women in the past 9 months. That is remarkable. Dominic Hayes is serving 25 years in prison. Have you had any contact with him since the sentencing? No, and I never will. He has written me letters, but I destroy them without reading them. Whatever he has to say, I do not need to hear it. And what about forgiveness? Do you think you will ever forgive him? Victoria considered this. Forgiveness is complicated. I do not forgive him for killing my daughter. I never will. But I am working on forgiving myself for not leaving sooner, for believing his lies. That is the forgiveness that matters to me. You are dating again. Can you tell us about that? Victoria smiled for the first time in the interview. I am seeing someone, a trauma therapist I met through the foundation. He understands what I have been through in a way most people cannot. It is early, but it is healthy. That is what matters to me now. Building healthy relationships. You mentioned Grace. What do you want people to know about your daughter? Victoria's eyes welled with tears, but she smiled through them. Grace Rachel Hayes lived for 6 months in my womb. She was strong, her kicks were fierce. I used to talk to her every day, tell her about the world she was about to enter. I had so many plans for her. She paused, composing herself. Grace never got to live the life I planned. But her legacy is living on through the foundation. Every woman we help, I do that in Grace's name. Every life we save. That is Grace's gift to the world. So she did live, just not in the way I expected. Catherine's own eyes were damp. What would you say to the women watching this who are in situations similar to what you experienced? Victoria looked into the camera again, her voice strong and clear. I would say this: you are not crazy. You are not overreacting. If someone is hurting you, physically or emotionally. You do not deserve it. You did not cause it. And you can leave. It will be hard. It will be scary. But on the other side of that fear is freedom, is life, is yourself again. Please, reach out for help. Call the National Domestic Violence Hotline. Contact the Grace Foundation. Tell a friend or family member. Do not suffer in silence like I did. Because silence protects abusers. Truth protects victims. The interview ended with information about the foundation scrolling across the screen. Within hours, the foundation's phone lines were flooded with calls. Donations poured in. Victoria's story had reached millions, and millions had heard the message. You are not alone. You can survive. There is help. The first anniversary of Grace's death arrived like a storm. Victoria could see coming, but could not avoid. She had been dreading this day for weeks. She woke early and drove to the cemetery where Grace's memorial stone stood. It was not a grave. There was no body to bury. But Victoria needed a place to visit, to talk to her daughter, to leave flowers. The stone was simple white marble with Grace's name and dates. Below that, Victoria had chosen an inscription. She lived in love, and love lives on. Victoria knelt on the grass, placing white roses at the base of the stone. The morning was cool and quiet. She was alone. "Hi, baby girl," she said softly. "It has been a year, a whole year without you. Some days I still can't believe you are gone, and I wake up and for a moment I forget. Then I remember, and it hurts all over again." She traced her fingers over Grace's name. "The foundation has helped over 1,500 women now. We opened a second location in San Francisco last month. We are planning a third in Chicago. All in your name. All because of you." A breeze rustled through the trees. Victoria liked to imagine it was Grace, letting her know she was listening. "I want you to know that I am okay. Not perfect, not healed completely, but okay. I am learning to live with the grief instead of being consumed by it. Your grandfather says grief is just love with nowhere to go. So I am putting that love into the foundation, into helping others. I hope that makes you proud." She sat on the grass, leaning against the memorial stone. "I miss you every single day. I wonder what you would have looked like, whether you would have had my eyes or your father's, what your laugh would have sounded like, what your first word would have been." Victoria stayed at the cemetery for over an hour, talking to Grace about everything and nothing, about the foundation's successes, about her relationship with the trauma therapist, which was growing into something real, about her father's health, which was good, about Margaret Ellis, who had become like a second mother to her. When she finally stood to leave, she felt lighter somehow, as if visiting Grace had given her permission to keep living. That evening, the foundation held a memorial event. Over 300 people attended, survivors, donors, volunteers, all gathering to remember Grace and to celebrate the lives that had been saved in her name. Victoria gave a short speech. "1 year ago today, I lost my daughter. It was the worst day of my life. But from that terrible loss has come something beautiful. This foundation, this community, this movement. Grace's life was brief, but her impact will last forever. Thank you all for being part of her legacy." After the event, Victoria stood alone on the foundation's rooftop terrace, looking out at the city lights. She heard footsteps and turned to see Harold approaching. "You did well tonight," he said, joining her at the railing. "Thanks, Dad. I could not have done any of this without you. You are stronger than you know, Victoria, stronger than I ever gave you credit for." They stood together in comfortable silence, father and daughter, bound by love and loss. "Do you think Mom would be proud?" Victoria asked. "I know she would. You have taken something unbearably painful and turned it into hope for others. That is exactly what Rachel would have done." Victoria leaned against her father's shoulder. "I still have bad days, days when I cannot get out of bed. When the grief is too heavy, that is normal. Healing is not linear. Some days will be harder than others. But most days now are okay. That is progress, right? That is tremendous progress." They watched the city lights twinkle in the darkness. Somewhere out there, Victoria knew. Women were making the decision to leave abusive situations, finding the courage to speak up, choosing survival. And maybe, just maybe, Grace's story was part of what gave them that courage. 2 years after the trial, Victoria stood in a conference room at the foundation's headquarters. The walls were covered with success stories, photos of women who had graduated from their programs, letters of thanks, articles about the foundation's impact. Grace Murphy entered carrying 2 cups of coffee. "The senator is here for the meeting. Are you ready?" Victoria nodded. They were meeting with lawmakers to discuss new legislation. Grace's law, they were calling it stronger protections for domestic violence victims, harsher penalties for abusers, more funding for shelters and support services. The meeting went well. The senator, a woman who had herself survived domestic violence decades ago, was passionate about the cause. She promised to champion the bill in Congress. After the senator left, Victoria sat at her desk and opened her laptop. Her inbox was flooded as always. Requests for speaking engagements, media interview offers, messages from women seeking help. One email caught her attention. The subject line read, "Thank you for saving my life." Victoria opened it and began to read. "Dear Mrs. Hayes, you do not know me, but I know you. 2 years ago, I saw the video of you falling down those stairs. I saw your husband push you. I saw the blood. And I realized that was going to be me if I did not leave. My husband had been abusing me for 5 years. Everyone thought we had the perfect marriage, but behind closed doors, he was a monster. I was too ashamed to tell anyone, too scared, but your courage gave me courage. I left him that day. I contacted your foundation. You helped me get a restraining order, find a safe place to live, and start over. Today, I have a new job, my own apartment, a life that is mine. My daughter is safe, and it is because you shared your story. Thank you for being brave enough to turn your pain into purpose. You saved my life. Rachel Montgomery." Victoria read the email twice, tears streaming down her face. This was why she did this work. This was why she got up every morning and fought through the grief. For women like Rachel, for lives saved, for futures reclaimed. She replied to the email. "Rachel, thank you for trusting us to help you. Your strength inspires me every day. You saved your own life by being brave enough to leave. I am just grateful the foundation could support you on that journey. Keep fighting, keep surviving, keep thriving, with love and hope. Victoria." That evening, Victoria had dinner with her father and her boyfriend, Thomas Fletcher, the trauma therapist. They ate at a small Italian restaurant in Santa Monica, laughing and talking about ordinary things. Work, movies, vacation plans. For the first time in years, Victoria felt almost normal. Not the woman she had been before Dominic. She could never be that person again. But someone new, someone stronger, someone who had survived hell and come out the other side. After dinner, Thomas walked Victoria back to her beach house. They stood on the deck watching the waves roll in. "I love you, Thomas said. It was the first time he had said it. Victoria smiled. "I love you too." They kissed under the stars, and Victoria felt something she had not felt in a very long time. Hope for the future, belief that happiness was possible again. Later, alone in her house, Victoria sat by the window with a cup of tea. She pulled out a letter she had written to Grace on what would have been her second birthday. "My dearest Grace," she read aloud, "you would be 2 years old today, walking, talking, filling my life with chaos and joy. Instead, you live in my heart and in the foundation that bears your name. I want you to know that I am okay. I am happy sometimes. I laugh again. I love again. I am building a life that honors you. The grief will never leave me completely. You will always be the daughter I lost, the future I will never have. But I am learning to carry that loss without being crushed by it. Your grandfather says that is what your grandmother would have wanted, for me to keep living, to find joy again. So that is what I am doing. I am living for both of us. I hope wherever you are, you can feel how much I love you, how much I miss you, how every good thing I do in this world, I do in your name. Happy birthday, baby girl. Mama loves you, always and forever." Victoria folded the letter and placed it in a box with all the others she had written to Grace over the past 2 years. Someday, when she was ready, she would publish them, share them with other mothers who had lost children. But for now, they were just between her and Grace. She walked out to the deck and looked up at the night sky, found the brightest star and imagined it was Grace looking down on her. "Thank you," Victoria whispered. "Thank you for giving my pain purpose. Thank you for the foundation, for the women we have helped, for the lives we have saved. Thank you for teaching me that survival is possible, that life after loss is possible, that I am stronger than I ever knew." The ocean whispered against the shore. The stars shone steady and bright. And Victoria Hayes, survivor and warrior, stood in the darkness and smiled. She had lost everything and found herself. She had been broken and rebuilt stronger. She had turned her tragedy into a movement. And she was not done yet. The Grace Rachel Hayes Foundation would keep growing. More women would be helped. More lives would be saved. Grace's law would pass. The world would become a little bit safer for women in danger. All because one woman had refused to stay silent. All because one woman had survived. Victoria looked out at the ocean one last time before going inside. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new women seeking help, new stories of pain and survival. But tonight she would rest. She would remember. She would honor the daughter who lived on and every woman the foundation helped. And she would keep moving forward, because that is what survivors do. They survive. They heal. They help others. They turn their pain into power. And they never, ever give up. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, please reach out for help. You are not alone. The National Domestic Violence Hotline is available 24 hours a day at 1-800-799-7233. You deserve safety. You deserve peace. You deserve life.